I'm Wolfman Sam, here with my partner Johnny Buff Guns.
Hello?
And we are Creatures
Creatures
of
of
the
the
Night.
Night.
I hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to be talking about Evil Dead. We're going to go through all three movies and possibly the remake. I'm not entirely sure. You want to cover the remake?
I saw the remake. I'll dive into that. And also the Evil Dead Rise, the recent one that came out 3 years ago.
Right. Those movies, the last two, the remake and Rise, I have not seen.
This is going to be a groovy podcast.
Yes, it's going to be groovy.
Sorry guys, I couldn't help myself.
Oh, that's okay. And I'll also briefly talk about the video games as well.
Yeah.
Because I've been...
And comic books, too.
Yes, comic books as well. I've been personally streaming on Twitch Evil Dead Regeneration, which is kind of the unofficial sequel to Evil Dead. It's basically the lost Evil Dead 4, which is... It's kind of like, if anybody remembers Jak and Dexter, it's like Jak and Dexter meets Evil Dead, but we'll get into that. But first, we'll get into the movies, of course.
Yes, to start off, we talk about the first Evil Dead from 1981, directed by none other than unknown Sam Raimi, who later directed films like Darkman, A Simple Plan, and the Spider-Man film, which we all know he did later on in his career as a film director. And this was the film that really jump-started his career.
Right. And I have to touch upon, before we get into Evil Dead, I have to touch upon that, Evil Dead was basically a germ idea that was kind of realized with Evil Dead. It started with a college film that they did called Within the Woods.
Yes, you're right.
It's like a precursor, and you can find it on YouTube. It is in terrible videos quality.
I've tried to watch it on YouTube or other. I can barely tell what's going on. I really
right. So diehard Evil Dead fans, if you want to find Within the Woods, just fair warning, you can find it, but it's not restored or anything like that. That would actually be a great fan project.
It
would. Someone would want to restore Within the Woods.
For what I've heard, the reason why Sam Raimi's never released it on like a Blu-ray DVD bonus feature because who owns that movie?
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the legal stuff once we get into Evil Dead 2.
It's interesting to for history. Wow, this is where it all started with Evil Dead before the full length.
Right. You see the genesis of everything, and like I said, much like the first Evil Dead movie, Within the Woods is surprisingly, from what you can tell from the kind of shot on Shidio VHS, as I like to call it. It's still very, very confident. These you got to remember, this was Sam Raimi, unknown Sam Raimi, and unknown Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell is part of Within the Woods.
Yes.
They were college kids. And
I think they were in high school. They knew. I know they
was it high school. Did it actually go back further in high school, Within the Woods?
High school, something like that.
Okay, so
whereas Evil Dead was college for them.
Yeah, even more impressive. So Within the Woods was high school era. That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yes.
I didn't know.
Well, because they were high school buddies, they made short movies together, especially Three Stooges, which we'll get into later eventually.
Right. Three Stooges, believe it or not, is sort of a influence on the later Evil Dead movies.
Yes.
But we'll get into that.
We'll get into that soon. Let's talk about the first Evil Dead film from 1981. What do you think of Evil Dead?
It's definitely, in terms of anybody who's looking to break out into film and is worried about, I need a big budget, no. You don't need any of that. You just need a vision, a good vision, and kind of sort of a way to do your effects. Because the effects in Evil Dead 1, yes, they're a little dated in places.
To a degree, but I still think they're very impressive for a guy who was a nobody at the time, and he did what he could to manage.
You have to keep in mind, Sam Raimi and company and Bruce Campbell were completely unknown. This was you said it was college.
Yeah, college.
College film.
I remember the first time I saw Evil Dead when I was getting into horror movies. My dad was showing me a lot of classics to catch up, and he showed me Evil Dead. He's like, oh, the guy who did Spider-Man directed this film. He was a college student at the time. I'm like, oh, really? And my first viewing, I was like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yes.
Impressive.
Yeah. And like I said, it is a perfect example for any upcoming film.
Right. It was probably one of the first, maybe horror films I learned about where it was like, shot on a low budget with like limited money, limited resources, like learning
Right,
that
right.
it's possible to make a movie no matter what your limits or resources are.
And just to hammer it home, if you're coming from like Army of Darkness or any of the previous stuff first, like when I was a kid, I saw Army of Darkness first.
Right.
This is night and day. Evil Dead 1 is gory, unapologetic,
It is.
frightening, and
Oh, it
is
is.
it is definitely the darkest in the series.
Oh, it is.
And
Especially how like compared to this and the rest of this series, the first one is full like out of like all straight horror. Like there's no
oh yeah, and gory. It's very
yeah,
very
that's
gory.
yeah, no, like my first viewing, I was like freaked out with it, especially like when the girl goes out in the woods, she gets raped by a tree. I'm like, holy crap!
Right, right. There's rape in this and stuff.
It's one of those things that you never
It goes
expect.
full like NC-17. It
Yeah,
really
pretty much.
it
Yeah,
really does. Before NC-17, I think was the thing.
I don't know when that was around to be honest. I couldn't tell you. I don't know the whole history of rating systems at that time, and
But and what's really interesting is on the DVD you actually get commentary from the man himself, Bruce Campbell.
yeah, true. Which I have to watch and check that out. I'm sure it's a
Yeah,
blast to like
I
hear
have,
that.
and it is hilarious. And
Right,
Bruce
right.
himself tells you just how low budget
Right.
everything
Well,
was.
there's also an interview I like to watch with like even though I've seen it a couple times, I always like to go back to like a refresher. It was 1982, like when the film was like getting like publicity and stuff. It was I don't know like who he was being interviewed by, but it was still a fun interview to listen to Sam Raimi about his idea and how he came up with this simple premise of a horror film that just came to him out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
of course, knowing Sam Raimi's quite the goofball in a good way. He's a very fun guy to listen to.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of those films that really stands the test of time.
Oh, it does. And he just took a simple concept about these. I think they're college students. They're not. Yeah, I think they don't really explain it. They're like college or high school students. But
Yeah,
the point is, a bunch of friends are like going in the cabin in the woods for like a getaway, but it turned out to be hell for them that night. Is what they did not
right,
expect.
right,
Especially when they go in
exactly.
the basement, finding the tape recorder, of some like professor or scientist who was recording about evil. They find the book of Necronomicon and stuff, and all hell
Right,
breaks loose. Yeah, it's
right,
just a
yeah,
simple premise that works very well. It doesn't try. I mean, it tries well, but it doesn't try too hard to the extreme.
yeah, and the character difference of the main character. Like I said, this is for the hardcore Evil Dead fans. It's
Yeah,
just an interesting analysis of Ash Williams as a character because in the
yeah.
first Evil Dead movie, he is a complete coward.
What's
He is a
funny is
complete coward, and
if you listen closely, they call him Ashley, not Ash.
right, right. They
I
call him
didn't realize.
Ashley
Yeah,
by the full name,
right. That
and
didn't. I still call him Ash though,
yeah,
despite it.
yeah.
That's
But
yeah.
he is not the Ash character that you see later in the
No,
sequels.
no.
Um, and it's just an
You know,
interesting
like
kind of character development that
right.
he
Well, when you
that
say he's
he
a coward, well,
becomes.
when you say he's a coward, when you think about it, he hesitates because he has no choice but to kill his girlfriend, his sister, and he's
Right,
this.
right, right, right. But like in terms of if you're looking for the Ash Williams of that we all know and love, it's sort of kind of growing pains from 1 to 2 at least.
Right,
I just want to take a minute just to talk about the effects. The
right.
effects in this movie are awesome. You have
They
stop
are.
motion. You have reverse footage stuff. That's how they did the whole scene with the tree. Is
Yeah,
they filmed everything in reverse. Uh, and well, yeah, they filmed everything in reverse, and then they reversed it or something like something like that. I might be
right.
explaining it terribly. Um,
That's okay.
the coolest thing, though, and the one of the most funny kind of bits of trivia I found out, the famous evil point of view camera shots
Yeah,
were actually, believe it or not, done by Sam Raimi and company, literally taking a dolly that is a camera on wheels and literally just running through the woods.
right.
I
That's
thought
the
that
other thing
was
about
really
this.
funny. And then the scene where, and spoiler alert, like I said, anybody coming in, we're expecting that you kind of seen these movies already, that you're familiar.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert for a 40-something-year-old.
It's the movie came out in 81, so it's like this movie's 44 years
Yeah,
old.
well,
so.
we're talking about all of them, so.
Right, true, very true.
But yeah, hopefully you guys, have obviously seen these movies, and that's why you clicked on this video.
Right.
But, it's things like that. The one scene in particular that I actually found pretty amazing was the scene where, in the first movie, the evil busts through the window. What you don't know about that window, it is not sugar glass. It is not a fake window. They burst through that window. That window was real glass. So when they did that was for a shoot. That was real.
Right. Well, especially that was shot like in some cabin in the middle of nowhere, and
yeah, it's one of those things. But is there anything you want to add?
Wait, let me see. Well, here's one. Here's one. The part when they go in the basement, they find the tape recorder. There's a ripped poster of The Hills Have Eyes. That's basically been like ongoing since this movie. Like Wes Craven and Sam Raimi like mocking or ripping off each other.
Yeah, like kind of giving like sort of nods, like non-antagonistic nods.
In The Hills Have Eyes, there's a post. I mean, it's not an actual Jaws post, but that's the idea, though. But I guess Wes Craven could not get a Jaws poster for that scene with the ripped Jaws poster. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, it is. It is. It is.
Interesting. All right. Is there anything you want to talk about Evil Dead 1?
Let's see. Oh yeah, like the part, like I thought it was funny, like when like before all this chaos, like Ash is like like pretends he's sleeping, and then like has a nice gift for his girlfriend.
Yeah, and that gift kind of becomes sort of the MacGuffin throughout the necklace. Right. We'll talk about that as we get more into the second one. But it does serve as a major plot point in the first one as well.
That's true. That's true, and also like his his friend Scotty's kind of a jerk too.
Right. Yeah, like in terms of Ash's friends, they're all kind of dicks.
Yeah, to a degree. Ash, I think, is the only one that's a little bit like gentleman, like to some degree.
Right, and again, this is like I said, growing pains.
Right.
This incarnation of Ash isn't necessarily the wisecracking Ash that we all know and love.
Right.
I said, growing pains.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. All right. And also, like with being called Deadites, they're not like they're sort of like possessed zombies, but they speak and have like all this dark humor talk.
Right. There's a clear difference between a Deadite and a zombie. A Deadite is more of a demon.
Right. That's true. That's
than
true.
A zombie.
Right.
Down to the whole possession.
Right. Thing. A little bit different than The Exorcist.
Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah. It was more like the when they read the book, all hell broke loose.
Yep. Yeah. That is why you don't ever play that tape.
Right. Exactly.
Or recite the book.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, no. Which I'm going to talk about later on with Evil Dead Rise as a little joke with that. You'll see.
Right.
Right. And like you said, with all the camera tricks, like this film, like, I don't know, like this was the first, but it had like such unique camera tricks that like people were inspired from this film.
Oh, yeah. Like the inspiration, what this film inspired, like it's untouchable.
Right.
Without this movie, I don't think we would have a lot of modern zombie movies or modern possession movies.
No, that's true.
I do know the film, and this is a criminally obscure film. There's a film called Deathgasm that takes heavy inspiration from Evil Dead. It's kind of like if you take black metal and mix with Evil Dead, you'll get something comedic like Deathgasm. But it's films like that. So many different other films that were inspired by Evil Dead, possibly even Dario Argento's Demons.
Maybe. Possibly. I could. It's hard to.
I don't know which came first, because didn't they come out the same?
No, Demons came out I think in like the mid '80s or something like that.
Like, I don't remember. I want to say either Demons came out first or after Evil Dead. I'm not sure.
Demons came out after Evil Dead.
Okay, so, well, if that's true, then it obviously inspired Dario Argento as
Yes,
well.
possibly.
And it was
It might.
It was pretty huge in India, apparently. A lot of rip-offs.
What, Evil Dead or Demons?
Evil Dead.
Right. Because I know that some countries banned this film because of the tree rape scene.
Yeah.
Which makes that makes sense to some degree.
Yeah. Well, I think it originally got an X rating. Originally.
Yeah.
And I remember Bruce Campbell saying that it was hard to distribute because of.
No, he said. Yeah, no, you're right. He said that when him and Sam first made this film, it was a pain in the neck to help finance this film. But that's every first film.
Right. Yeah. Every first film is hard, and I would imagine even back then.
Because I've watched some YouTubers or other people said they didn't care for this film because of how it was not the usual. Well, got to start somewhere, otherwise you don't end up anywhere.
Yeah. A lot of famous directors also start in horror. Actually,
exactly. That's how Sam Raimi started. Started with indie horror before he was a big shot.
Right.
Because people think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies or what was later.
Spider-Man movies. Maybe Drag Me to Hell, but Drag Me to Hell was returned to form for him.
Right. Well, true. That's true. Yeah, that's different. I consider that
roots.
I consider that as a different, separate, not close to even an Evil Dead content.
Right. But in terms of genre.
Yeah, but you can see maybe some Evil Dead to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. Exactly. And also that car they used when they drive to the cabin, believe it or not, that was used in Spider-Man.
Right. That was kind of a running joke. I think that was. I forget if it was Sam's car or Sam's.
Something like that. I don't know whose car it was.
Something it was always a running joke. It was always an Easter egg ever since.
Yeah, he uses this car in a lot of his films. I guess as a reminder about where he started and how he turned out to be. I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, believe it or not, Bruce Campbell actually suffered a couple injuries during the making of this film.
I can believe it.
Especially when you see him running and limping. That's what made it effective for Ash. How he was so damaged after what he went through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He even gets just about as damaged as in the second one, I believe.
True. And also,
I'm not really sure. I think he gets more damaged in the first one.
I guess that's debatable among Evil Dead fans. When was he more damaged?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's
somebody would have to make a chart of that.
Yeah.
Damage.
And also, if you remember the movie Donnie Darko, there's a scene where he takes his girlfriend to the movie theaters. They're watching Evil Dead.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, it was definitely a big influence on a lot of horror movies going forward, for sure.
Oh yeah, well, especially I never realized I was a kid in the 2000s. Evil Dead had this big cult following. I never realized.
Yeah. A lot of people. Well, that's how they got into Bruce Campbell.
True. Well, also because my intro was Spider-Man before I knew about any of others.
Right. Yeah. Same with me. Is I knew Bruce from being that cameo guy in Spider-Man first before I even saw Evil Dead.
Right.
Actually, no, that's not entirely true because I saw Army of Darkness before I saw Spider-Man.
Right. Okay, there you go.
So I actually knew Bruce from Evil Dead, just the more comedic version.
Also, even despite I did mention this on a podcast before in the past and a YouTube video I made, but for the sake of it, as some of you may or may not remember, folks, I met Sam Raimi a year ago.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll put the photo in post.
Yes.
Make sure to put that photo in post.
Yes.
But yeah, that's definitely a cool moment. That's definitely a bucket list type moment.
Sam Raimi was so very kind and very genuine that if he was not a film director, this guy could have been a comedian. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, just ignore my dogs outside. They're
sorry, people.
Barking. So, if any of you hear dogs,
Don't worry, he's not a possessed dog. He's not a dead dog.
Those are my dogs, the hounds of hell. Okay, yeah, yep. And we forgot to mention it is Memorial Day, and in the time of filming this, so
that's
happy
true.
Memorial
Yes,
Day, everybody.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
Yeah,
and salute our veterans.
Yep. But yeah, right. Is there anything else you want to add about Evil Dead 1 before we move on to 2?
No, I think we can move on to Evil Dead 2 at this point. Yeah, we covered basically everything.
Okay. Well, funny story about Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2 is like half remake, half sequel.
True.
they didn't have the rights to the first Evil Dead, so they effectively had to remake the first half. So that's why it's a different cast for the most part. Sans Bruce Campbell, of course. Bruce Campbell does make a return as the Ash character, but the entire first half of Evil Dead 2 is more or less a remake of the first movie. Um, every time I watch Evil Dead 2, I always skip that part because my headcanon is we've seen Evil Dead 1, so I play it right when Ash hits the tree and is possessed.
Right. Right.
So that's how I watch Evil Dead 2.
Right.
But yeah, Evil Dead 2 is more or less a more goofier version of Evil Dead, where things happen. You know, we get the famous scene where Ash, the evil gets into Ash's hand, and he chops off his hand, and we get
Or Ash
with a chainsaw hand.
Right. Groovy.
And I'm just going to talk about again just the metamorphosis of the character. This time around, Ash is more confident. He's more wisecracking. He's kind of dumb. He's always been kind of dumb. We finally get the realization of Ash, the Ash that we all know and love.
Yes.
The less cowardly Ash.
Yes.
We also get a archaeologist, right? She's an archaeologist.
Yeah, she's basically the daughter of the guy
who's
a
daughter of Professor Nomi, who was the original dude that basically unleashed the evil.
Yes.
And what happens is the evil is unleashed, and Ash has to deal with not only a very stupid redneck couple, but evil as well as probably the first like boss character, I'd like to say, the witch in the cellar, which is the archaeologist's mother, actually.
Yes.
Some really cool effects there. The one thing that always sticks out to me is just a funny thing. I don't know if Raimi did it as a goof, but if you ever noticed anybody who's had a good set of ears, if you ever noticed during the transformation scene of the witch, where her neck kind of becomes this stop motion Harryhausen thing, I can't help but notice monkey sounds.
Really?
Sounds of monkey. Go back and watch that scene when she transforms and they're fighting, and listen to the sounds. It's monkey sounds.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know if that was an intentional goof.
I never noticed
that. Was the only stock sound that they could find. It's just a really goofy kind of thing. And there are some goofy, slapsticky kind of blending of horror moments.
The first time I saw this was in college when I first joined my horror and sci-fi club. Around the time, I was being exposed to different horror films I had never seen or heard before. We watched Evil Dead 2. I basically went in blind, not knowing anything about it, and then surprised, wow, this was not what I expected. At first I was thinking, okay, more scary, but I was like, wow, this is more lighthearted and more
it's
comedic.
More goofy. There's more slapstick. It's not totally divested of horror, but it's a lot more slapstick. Even when Ash is dealing with his possessed hand, we get a lot of Three Stooges kind of very slapsticky. There's even a very goofy moment where an eyeball goes flying into somebody's mouth.
Yes.
Very comedically. Or my favorite, and it always reminds me of a dark version of Looney Tunes, when Ash is literally hunting down his hand through the walls.
Yes. Or
it reminds me of Looney Tunes, complete with their mouth full.
Or Addams Family or Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry would have been better. And there's just a lot of goofy moments.
I know.
And Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And I think
for some reason, my first view, it did not occur to me to think that it was a semi reboot. Then it continues where it left off, where Ash is being
I completely forgot about it.
Yeah,
I always think that it's a direct sequel, and I'm
same.
actually, no, it's more of a requel, right?
Before the term requel was
more like a proto requel.
Right. But then again, a lot of Evil Dead fans make the debate about like continuity is not supposed to be taken seriously, and
Yeah, and a lot of fans, myself included, make the joke of it being a different crew who did the exact same thing this time around.
right,
Multiple different universes of different Lindas,
yeah,
all that kind of
yeah. Well,
stuff.
instead of like with this being a small semi reboot, instead of Ash and his friends, it's just Ash and his girlfriend that were.
Like I said, my headcanon, if I had to do a headcanon, is Evil Dead 1 and take out the beginning of Evil Dead 2 and have Evil Dead 2 start where Ash is taken by the evil and bashed against the tree, and you have a straight line, right?
Right.
You have a straight line, and then obviously where you would start Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert is when he goes through the
My,
portal.
my dad was telling me wait till you like when I first saw it. He said wait till you see the ending how it sets up Army of Darkness and
Yeah, it does. It is a little different.
bro.
But they didn't know at the time they were going to actually do
If you
Army of
also look
Darkness.
if you also look closely at the end, it's Sam Raimi has a small cameo. Actually,
Yes, he
he has
does.
a small cameo in the first Evil Dead film, believe it or not, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Evil Dead 2. What ends up happening is Ash is sent through a portal by accident because the portal does not close. The archaeologist dies, and the reason why they opened the portal in the first place is to send evil back. So,
Right, right,
and that sets up Army of Darkness.
right. I like again the effects in this are also amazing too. Like I like the part when Ash is like going berserk and crazy. The wall with that like moose I think it was or deer.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
deer head, the lamps,
yeah,
just stuff flying around.
yeah. My first like
Really
I said
cool effects.
going back to my first view, I'm asking myself, am I supposed to be laughing at this or take like
Well, yeah, like I said, it's goofy. It's
yeah
goofy, and I think it knows that it is goofy.
right
But yeah.
yeah. Also,
Anyways,
thanks to Stephen King for helping to finance this movie.
yep. Fun fact: Stephen King did finance Evil Dead 2, so
He did.
thank you, Mr. King.
Yes. Because when Sam Raimi was having a hard time like to finance Evil Dead 2 after when Crime Wave was not the biggest hit, he thought, okay, I'll go back to making a sequel to Evil Dead, but got so many rejections and Stephen King was very kind to help him finance Evil Dead 2 because he was a huge fan of the first Evil Dead movie.
Awesome. That's an
Yes.
awesome.
It is. It's groovy.
Scooby.
Yes, the beginning of Ash's one-liners in this movie.
Yes, the beginning of the famous Groovy, and the beginning of really, like I said, the defining what defined Ash as a character, like
Right.
the beginning of what makes Ash Ash,
Right.
for sure.
I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul. Swallow this.
Yeah, one-liners. Yeah. One of my favorite scenes for sure.
Yeah, same. And the character Annie is, at first she doesn't seem to take a liking to Ash, thinking that he was a murderer, but little did she know what was really going on.
Yeah, and she realizes that pretty quickly. Also, she's just really funny.
Yeah.
There are some genuinely just funny scenes where she's dragging the redneck and
Yeah.
he can't stop screaming and she's like, "Oh, shut up!"
Right.
And I just found that
Well-
really funny.
Well, especially how like his girlfriend gets dragged away, and Ash thinks it's too late, but he thinks there was still a chance. But I hate to say it, Ash was kind of right. There was kind of a chance where she was probably dead already.
Yeah, and she was kind of. We'd have to assume that she's probably killed off screen, probably eaten by the tree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, another Wes Craven. There was apparently I never realized if you look closer, there's a Freddy Krueger glove.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to look up a picture though because it's barely noticeable when you're watching the. You don't think about it.
Well, I think we'll get into a little bit of connecting with continuity a little later when we talk about the comic books.
Right.
We'll get into that.
Well, the other thing too, if you remember Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy was watching Evil Dead on television when she was trying to stay
So
awake.
they possibly could be in the same universe. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know. That is just hard to say.
Just a theory. Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, do you want to get into Army of Darkness, or is there anything?
Let's see. Well, the way the movie ends, like Ash is like, "No, how did I get here?" It's like, "How could I have ended up in this time? Like, why?" It's like
Yep.
he's cursed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is he's always been kind of cursed and he's
True.
always kind of being sent to a different time and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
I'll
Also,
talk about the series as well.
right.
I want to get into the Evil
Right.
Dead
But,
series.
but believe it or not, there's a deleted scene where that was cut for some reason that Ash was eating the character Annie like sees him outside when he's possessed and he eats a squirrel. But I don't know if it's a real squirrel, obviously, but
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, could have. It's like, it could have gone either way. I'm kind of. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm glad they cut this scene. It's like, was it really
Yeah,
necessary? Maybe
it's
not.
not really important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that important to the story where Annie just found him outside eating a squirrel because he was
Yeah, and
possessed.
he, it's really the only time he really gets possessed.
That's
But
true.
he kind of sort of gets possessed again in Army of Darkness, kind of.
Yeah, true to some
But we'll,
degree.
we'll get into that. Is
Yeah.
there anything you want to add before we get into the Army of Darkness?
Let me see. I think we just about covered everything. Yeah.
Okay, onward to Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. Not to be confused with Austin Powers.
No, I forget. Ash,
Yeah,
Ash
Army of
says
Dark.
something.
Yeah, Army of Darkness is the more comedic take. It's Ash Williams in the Middle
In
Ages.
action.
Yep, in action, and he has to fight the evil dead in the Middle Ages,
Right.
as well as an evil version of himself for the
Yes.
19th time, Evil Ash, which gives us probably one of the best lines: "Good, bad, I'm the captain."
Yeah. This is another film like it's quotable. Like if you're
Oh
having a
yeah,
bad
it's
day,
quotable, it's
quote Army of
comedic,
Darkness.
it's comedic, and like I said, I think it's for those of you that aren't familiar with Evil Dead, it's actually a good starting point. And I know it's weird to say, given that it's the technically third movie, but there's a recap at the beginning that recaps
Another
at least
reboot.
the second movie, right?
Right.
And you could go in this not knowing a thing about Evil Dead and completely get caught up on what Evil Dead is, who the
Right.
characters are, without ever watching it or really being into horror. So I'd say it's a good date night movie.
Yeah. Give me some sugar, baby.
Yep, exactly.
What? Well, that's what we call pillow talk, baby.
That's it. My favorite line still is,
What's
"You
that?
found me beautiful once, honey. You got real ugly."
It also we
And
have
he
to
did,
press.
and to Bruce's credit, he does some. I don't know if he had like stunt double or whatever,
I don't know.
but he
I'm
does
not
some
sure.
impressive stunts, um, and definitely steps up his game in
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
As
but
comedic as it is.
well, like everyone points out, Ash is kind of a complete dick and a jerk in this movie.
Right. This is Ash fully
But
realized.
that's what makes it funny, though. That's the joke.
Yeah, and
Especially how he's been through so much at this point.
I
It's
do
he
like
doesn't
that we get
care.
a day job. I do like that he works at S Smart,
Yes,
Shop S Smart.
something like that. I don't know what it's. I don't know. If that's a reference to some like popular shopping.
It's probably a reference to Walmart.
Probably, but they
I've
couldn't get the
always
rights to
kind of
Walmart.
seen it as Walmart, complete with the
Right, right.
But yeah, Army of Darkness, definitely a perfect movie to start at if you're not familiar with Evil Dead movies.
Yeah,
And if you're looking for a more comedic take, if the horror stuff
right,
isn't your thing, Army of Darkness is awesome. And it's
right,
awesome by itself too.
right. And this
As a
was
third movie, the
right,
continuity is pretty perfect.
right.
Um,
Also, this was made by Universal, bigger budget than the first two
oh
Evil
yeah,
Dead films.
much bigger budget. Looks better. Yes, there's some dated '90s stop
True.
motion here and
Yeah,
there, but
they
it's so charming in its style. It's just you can't
Well,
even really.
if people who are still like,
It's not even really that much distracting. It's so fun. It's
well,
so
people
fun,
are
and I will say this. I will say this as a love letter to Evil Dead. It was one of my first Evil Dead movies when I was 10 years old, and brought me to the character.
right. Well, again, I saw this in college. Right after watching Evil Dead 2, I went straight to Army of Darkness right away, and
I saw this on TV with my aunt
right,
back when I was 10. So
right,
yeah,
right. Gotcha.
I
And
have a
also because
very
this was made by Universal. Bigger, like I already said. I'm sorry, I meant to say was for film historians. That there's still film historians out there. The whole like skeletons, Jason the Argonauts.
yeah. That was a tribute to Jason and the
Yes.
Argonauts
Yes,
for sure.
that would even like I haven't seen every classic film, but I knew right away like Jason the Argonauts.
Yep, yep, for sure. And like I said, it plays into its charm.
Right.
Yeah, we get little ashes too as well. Little evil ashes.
Yeah. London
Which,
Bridge is falling.
yes, one of my favorite scenes.
Want some hot
London Bridge is
chocolate?
falling down, falling down, falling
Yeah.
down.
This is the kind of film to have a field day with and have a
Oh yeah,
party.
it is. It's funny in all the right way. It's so.
Oh, it
goofy.
is. Or especially how like when Ash does not listen to Mr. Pitt from Seinfeld, Klaatu, Verada, Nikto, referencing the day the Earth stood still.
Yes, yes, Mr.
And
Merlin.
again, three Stooges.
Yep. And that scene's awesome as well.
Right.
Has some great effects.
Right.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
But yeah, like that movie for a while was like the definitive end to Evil Dead for a while.
Yeah.
Not counting the comics, which the comics we kind of briefly touched upon in a Nightmare on Elm Street comic.
Right.
Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective.
Well, I don't know the whole story. From what I've heard throughout the years, like after Army of Darkness, they kept like saying, "We're gonna make an Evil Dead 4, an Army of Darkness 2." It's like Sam Raimi was just trying to get our hopes up high or something.
Right. Maybe he wanted to do it. We don't know.
Right. Well, again, don't blame Sam Raimi. Blame the studios.
There was talk of Ash versus Evil Dead, Ash versus Freddy versus Jason.
Yes.
Which we got a comic out of it.
Yes.
Which I always kind of consider that a unofficial Evil Dead 4.
Right.
That's an awesome comic. If you guys
right.
read it,
right.
It's totally awesome. And what I would love to do is have Mr. Bruce Campbell read it, do an audio book of it.
Well, one thing I forgot to mention too is that like I have like this Army of Darkness where it's got the director's cut, the theatrical cut, and it's also got some kind of let's see, a international television cut, which I have not seen. I don't know what the point, like why they did that.
Any sort of difference between the two?
I don't. Well, let's see. Yes, the director's cut. They used the alternate original ending that Sam Raimi wanted to use for Army of Darkness.
Interesting.
Yes. Have you seen the alternate ending to Evil Army of Darkness?
Yes, I have.
I know.
Yes,
it's like wow. Imagine they used that
the quote unquote bad ending where he sleeps too long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ends up in like in a future apocalyptic world.
I slept too long.
Yeah. Well, because that's what happens with film and studio interference, right there.
Yeah, and I like the Hail to the King ending. I like
True.
To me, that's the definitive ending of him getting back and getting the girl.
Right. I guess maybe if at that time, if Sam Raimi thought maybe no more Evil Dead films, well, just have Ash for once have a happy ending.
Yeah. And for me, that's where I probably would end it. But we'll get into more Evil Dead stuff.
Right. Well, especially you said, we'll talk about some of the comic books. Like there was Ash versus Evil. Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and also there was Darkman versus Ash because it makes sense because he created Darkman.
Right, and Darkman was essentially because Sam Raimi couldn't get the rights to the Shadow movie.
And Batman. Well, he was rejected for a lot of comic book movies, Sam Raimi, before.
I would have liked to see his take on the Shadow for sure.
Same. That could have been awesome, but he just couldn't get the rights.
Darkman's an awesome movie too. So.
Right. Oh yeah, I love Darkman. It's great.
Yeah. But which, by the way, Bruce makes a cameo.
Right. Yes, at the end. Right. I'm everyone. I'm everywhere.
Yes.
Nothing can stop me, Darkman. Because originally he wanted Bruce Campbell for Darkman, but studios wanted Liam Neeson was well more known than Bruce Campbell was.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Bruce did Maniac Cop as well, and
Yes, I've never seen those, but I've heard about them.
they're good movies. They're good movies.
Yeah, there's also like Marvel zombie comic books where basically Ash crosses over with Marvel comic book characters. Basically, the Marvel characters are Deadeyes, like Spider-Man, Iron Man.
And there's some great video games. I'll get into the video games real quick. I mentioned during this earlier on in the stream, there is Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick. I'm talking about the PS2 era. I don't know if there's any more. There's probably some more that I'm forgetting about. But Fistful of Boomstick is basically like Evil Dead 4. Some other person summons the evil. And Ash is brought back in time to, not the Middle Ages, but to, the Salem witch trials.
That's interesting.
And we get a descendant of Ash, who is a blacksmith. And he helps him out throughout the course of the game.
Well, especially in Army of Darkness, he made, his own, armor hand.
Yeah, but we get some cool stuff. That is a cool game. If you're ever looking to play that, definitely an unofficial Evil Dead 4.
Right.
Of course, it's we get all the voice cast. We get Bruce Campbell,
right,
as Ash in that game. Definitely a cool game.
Well, like I said, in the 2000s, after when I think Sam Raimi did Spider-Man, I think the Evil Dead films got more bigger because of the Spider-Man
when
films.
Spider-Man took off, everybody that wasn't a diehard Evil Dead fan,
right,
knew who Sam Raimi was.
Right. I mean, he was established before, but Spider-Man made him bigger.
Right. And I think in turn it made Bruce Campbell bigger for newer fans.
Yeah.
Even though he was sort of a glorified cameo guy. He also did Burn Notice, too.
I know about the show, but I've never seen it.
So, I think it was a combination of that and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just a thought, how, why I think Evil Dead is more bigger than it was when it first came out. And
yeah, and of course, going back to the video games, there is one other video game that I know of called Evil Dead Regeneration. For all you Jack and Dexter fans, it's basically like what happens if you take the PS2 classic that is Jack and Dexter and add a little Evil Dead in it. It pays tribute to the second film while kind of continuing and kind of being like Evil Dead 4.5. That's kind of where I would put those games in the headcanon. They kind of like 4.5 sort of standalone.
Right.
Great stuff, cool games.
Right.
Yep. But with that said, I want to get into the series real quick.
Yes.
Ash vs. Evil Dead. Now, this series is literally just Evil Dead 4.
Pretty much, like a longer movie of Evil Dead 4.
And like everything else, it doesn't have a happy ending for Ash.
We
haven't had a happy ending for Ash since Army of Darkness.
That's true, yeah. I used to watch this show on a daily basis when it was on television. I loved it because remember we saw the first episode together when it first broadcast on TV.
It does justice for those of you that are not familiar with the series. It does justice to the characters. It's a perfect, definitely interpretation of the characters.
Right.
And it continues kind of where Army of Darkness sort of left off.
Well, again, if you remember the first episode, Ash explains to Pablo, they only showed flashbacks to one. They couldn't get the rights to Army of Darkness to show flashbacks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, towards the end...
But they do make Army of Darkness references, though. I give them that.
Yeah. And towards the end, it does get a little flabby, but it's a good show.
Bruce Campbell still puts on his A game, no matter the material.
Oh yeah.
From even if not every episode wasn't the best, I still enjoyed every moment of the series. I had a lot
of fun if you guys haven't seen it, definitely check it out.
Yeah, like I said, when we watched the first episode together, not knowing, I went in blind. I didn't know anything about it. I'm glad I did go in blind, not know anything about it.
Yeah, I went in going, I hope this is good. I hope this is
right.
Good.
Same, but it really I was satisfied. Well, granted, I wish the show could have lasted maybe at least 5 seasons. I would have been satisfied, but still,
I would
three's
have
better
been
than nothing.
I would have been satisfied if they hadn't gone with the cliffhanger ending.
Yeah, true. I can agree on
Because I
that.
like conclusion. I like
Yeah.
conclusion.
But I've heard rumors about that the show may come back like an animated style, which I can because Bruce is getting
Could
older.
work, but I don't know.
I know.
I would hate for this series to kind of be kind of fatigued out.
Yeah,
You and I both love Evil Dead, so
yeah.
I just hope if they come back, they do it right, and we don't have franchise fatigue.
Right. Well, I think whether people like love or hate Evil Dead, but Evil Dead is a solid horror franchise for sure.
For sure.
I haven't seen one bad Evil Dead movie yet, but that's just my opinion. But I've met some people who like either like Army of Darkness more, Evil Dead 2 more, or prefer one or the other. But that's everyone's opinion.
I like them all. I like them all.
I like it as a whole. And
the only ones I haven't seen are the remakes and the requels, Evil Dead Rise and the remake.
Right.
We'll get into that, but I'll let you handle that because I have not seen it.
Right. Well, one more thing about the show of Ash vs. Evil Dead. Me and my buddy like to quote this show a lot. Like, again, more funny one-liners from Ash. Like
the magic is still there for sure.
Yes, like when him and the gang are going to see somebody about the book. It goes, the first thing I gotta do is see somebody about a book. The other first thing I gotta do is some card. My heart is jacking like a quarterback on prom night, or hey Pablo, let's get some churros. That's not racist. That's a good Mexican dessert. I'm not Mexican. That's the spirit.
Bruce is on point. He's on point.
Or when he killed Brandy's parents because they were possessed, and she goes, "You know they were Jewish." No, I did not know that. You should have said there been those dumb crosses.
Yeah, right.
Or especially when he found out he had. Or especially when he found out that he had a daughter in season 3. This is my daughter Amanda. It's Brandy, you asshole. Brandy. I know. This is just again. If you're having a bad day,
the puppet was pretty cool.
Right. Again, if you're having a bad day, quote some Bruce Campbell one-liners. You'll feel better.
Yeah, it makes everything better.
Yes.
It makes everything better.
Or when he goes back to the cabin, the things that happen in this life, death and taxes. I don't pay taxes. All I know is death.
That is a great line, actually.
It is because the story is that's a fact of life. Death and taxes. Let's be honest.
Yep. For sure. One thing I want to add for all you music guys, for all your headbangers out there, if you're familiar with a comedy band by the name of Psycho Stick, they did do a song for Bruce Campbell entitled Bruce Campbell, which is basically a fan obsessed song about the man himself, Bruce Campbell.
Right. There was also that, like we mentioned earlier before the podcast, there was My Name is Brew. It's like a mockumentary, where he plays a fictional character.
Yeah, basically when he makes fun of himself. I have to see that.
Same. I haven't seen that yet either.
That's on my movie list. I will definitely see that. Definitely get around to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Wait a second. We're Evil Dead fans. We haven't seen. We're human beings. We're not perfect.
Yeah, so we try to watch as many movies as we can, but sometimes we all have our blind spots as fans.
Well, then we all have our personal things going on too in life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always remember, everybody, take care of yourself first.
That's true. Yes, very true.
Number
Exercise,
one.
Healthy, meditate, go for a walk. It's beautiful outside.
I mean, we try to do this as often as we can, but it's just finding the time and obviously personal issues and just making sure that we're both healthy.
Right.
So, and appreciate anybody who's watching this and enjoying what we do. We try to give you guys the best, and we try to give you guys encouragement and and kind of positivity so that you can go out and do what you want to do.
Just like how Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi are inspirations for future generations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yes, and getting on to the remake, which I recently finally saw for the first time ever. I avoided this movie for literally 12 years because when the remake came out, I said to myself, forget it, no thanks. Yeah, exactly. I thought this is sacrilegious, but throughout the years, people kept telling me, "Oh, wasn't that bad?" I'm like, "Really?" But then I finally caved in saying, all right, I'll check it out. When I watched it, I'm like, okay, it wasn't great, perfect. It was okay, solid, decent, not great, just
All right,
okay.
I'm gonna have to check out
I
the
give them
remake.
credit. They tried. They really did try. It wasn't great, just they tried. I give them the credit that they tried.
All right, well, duly noted.
Yes. Even though, granted, it's not this. The funny part is when you're watching, you're like, it doesn't feel like Evil Dead. It felt like it could have been its own thing. It just has Evil Dead in the title for marketing.
Right.
Because you have different
That's kind of
characters.
disappointing, but hey, I'd rather it be its own thing.
Yeah, it's
than
kind
trying
of
to emulate.
It's like similar with the Godzilla '98 film. It wasn't called Godzilla. It could have been called something else to make it a better like title movie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing I think I found interesting was the main characters. Like all these characters were in the cabin in the woods because the sister was a former recovering drug addict. Not only is she fighting Deadite, she's fighting her addiction. It's like that's actually very interesting. Oh, it is. It is. And of course, like everything, there's always a bunch of like throwbacks of Evil Dead.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic too, like that the sister would be an addict only to be possessed by a literal demon.
That's true. No, she does get possessed. Yes.
They really think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Is there anything
the other thing about this movie?
out?
Well, the other thing about this film, nobody was safe. When you watch it, you'll see why.
All right, duly noted. Is there anything you want to add about this film?
Let's see. Anything I want to add about it? Not that I could think of. Just that it was like, a decent remake. And, well, actually, wait. Bruce Campbell does have a cameo voice, like saying groovy. As if that was a saying of passing the torch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, I'm going to have to check it out for sure.
Yeah, decent. Well, I don't know why they never made a sequel to this or do a crossover with this. I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? Do you want to talk about Evil Dead Rise?
Yes.
I haven't seen that either, so.
I saw it in the theaters when it came out. Again, I was very impressed with it. I'm like, this was not bad. It was better than I expected, despite, again, no Bruce. Well, again, supposedly Bruce Campbell has a voice cameo record, but I'm not sure which part, though. It was about. And ironically, this is probably the first time I've seen an Evil Dead series where it took place in a apartment in the city. I'm like, that's interesting. No cabin in the woods. Well, it opens up with cabin in the woods until eventually we see this family.
Interesting. That's pretty interesting that like the newer version of Evil Dead is trying to be its own thing, which I can respect.
Yeah, that's what I appreciate about it.
There's going to be a new generation of kids that are going to have a completely different interpretation.
And I know that Sam Raimi does work on these films. I don't know what his role is, but whether he's a consultant on this film or other Evil Dead projects.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because especially he is the man that started it all with Evil Dead. Yeah,
for sure. I definitely would have to check out those two films myself.
Yeah. The only thing I was not sure is this another reboot or again? It's hard to say.
It's obviously trying to be its own thing, which I said, I can respect. I could also it has the Evil Dead title, but I can respect being its own.
I guess the one thing I could see too is that I could see maybe Evil Dead being an anthology where it's anybody that can fight these Deadites.
That'd be a cool, interesting concept. You could really play around with the mythology of the Necronomicon itself.
Right.
And you get into more of the spells, more of what the Necronomicon could really do.
Right.
That would make for a good series alone.
Right.
You don't have to necessarily focus on the main character, Ash. You can focus on people's different experiences with the Necronomicon.
Well, that's true. Well, in this movie, it's about.
And you can place it in any time period.
Right. Well, with this film being its own thing, it's about these two sisters. One that has 3 kids, and one who her younger sister is pregnant with a child, and she's afraid of being a parent because of. Again, it's not explained, but we assume that it's possibly that she looks at her sister with her children, how hard it is to be a parent.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And also, despite she's an aunt to her nieces and nephews, she's the fun-loving aunt. I'm an uncle. Same thing with my nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also when the aunt protects her nieces and nephew from when the mother gets possessed, it's a little bit like Alien with the younger sister aunt and her younger niece.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna have to check these out for sure.
Also, when I was watching this movie, I said to myself, like, the part when the brother is like reading the Necronomicon book, I'm thinking to myself, there should be like a label on the Necronomicon book, like, disclaimer: do not read this book, or otherwise all hell will
like sort of like when you open a book and it has like a forward.
Right.
Like, if you read this book, you would. But I guess if it had that, people wouldn't read it, and
right.
It's like would not have a plot.
It's like in Young Frankenstein: do not use this brain, abnormal.
Abnormal brain, abnormal book. Please return.
Right. right.
Anyway,
and of course, the one thing that never dies down is they made another Wes Craven reference because. But before all the chaos, somebody like knocked on the door, like, "Hey, you want to come over for a Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy marathon? Even the bad ones."
What bad ones?
Right, exactly. Somebody said that. Like, there is no bad Freddy Krueger movie.
That's pretty funny. Well, rest in peace to Wes.
Yes.
Of course.
Right.
Is there anything you want to add?
And whether people will agree with me with this or not, compared to the 2013 remake, this felt more Evil Dead-ish than the last remake.
Interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out.
Especially with the "I'll swallow your soul."
All right, so some interesting callbacks for sure.
Oh yeah, cool. Absolutely.
Very cool.
But it's done very well. Yes. Definitely recommend Evil Dead Rise, especially if you're an Evil Dead fan. But my advice, go into it blind and be surprised and be like, okay, better than I expected.
Good to know.
Yes. Yes. But just don't read the book. And wait, one more thing about the Necronomicon book that I'd never seen done before. The brother accidentally cut himself, and apparently when the blood drips on the book, it comes a little bit...
That makes sense, because the book is bound in blood.
Right, that's true. I just never noticed or never seen that before done before.
That's a nice little attention to detail, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, better than I expected, and highly recommended for hardcore Evil Dead fans.
All right, good to know. Is there anything you want to add, or you want to wrap it up here?
Let's see. No, I think that's about everything.
All right. Well, as always, I've been Wolfman Sam with my host, Johnny Buff Guns. We are Creatures of the Night. This has been Evil Dead Retrospective, and we'll see you guys next time.
And it's been one groovy podcast.
Groovy.